Welcome to Nightling, where true horror never sleeps. If you're brave enough, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell because the night is only just beginning. What if a school lockdown wasn't random, but a deadly game of cat and mouse aimed directly at your family? I live in a rural area outside Boise, Idaho. The kind of place where you can drive for miles without seeing another house. Rolling fields stretch toward the horizon, interrupted only by clusters of trees and the occasional barn. It's quiet, peaceful, or at least it should be. I'm a middle school teacher. My daughter, Lily, is in 7th grade, and my foster son, Jake, is in 5th. Our family isn't perfect, but it's close. We share dinners, homework help, and the usual ups and downs. The kids go to the same school where I teach science, a small building tucked away behind wide fields and a single main road. In 2018, my world was shaken. My close friend Maria was killed by her partner. He was a dangerous man, later convicted of multiple murders and sentenced to life without parole. We were all shaken by how quickly violence could strike close to home. Then, 2 years later, the nightmare returned in a way I never expected. It was a Monday afternoon in early March 2020. The air still carried the cold bite of winter, but signs of spring were everywhere. Buds on the trees, the sun lingering longer after school. I was in my 6th grade science class, halfway through a lesson about the solar system. The kids were sketching models of planets and moons, asking curious questions about gravity and orbits. I loved teaching moments like this, when their eyes lit up with wonder. My phone buzzed quietly in my pocket. I glanced down and saw it was a text alert from the school's emergency system. The message was brief but chilling. Alert! Someone is at the school claiming to be Jake's biological father and requesting to pick him up. I froze. Jake's biological father was locked away in prison, serving a long sentence for crimes we all hoped he'd never be free from. No one else had permission to pick Jake up, and no one lived nearby who could make that claim. My heart pounded. I quickly texted back. No one is allowed to pick him up. Then I called Jake's classroom and asked the teacher to send him to me immediately. Minutes later, Jake appeared in the doorway, his face confused and pale. He walked over silently, and I tried to smile, to reassure him, but my stomach twisted in knots. Then the lockdown alarm blared through the school's PA system. Loud, urgent, impossible to ignore. Lockdown. Lockdown. This is not a drill. The classroom door clicked locked. Desks were pushed against it, blocking entry. Lights were turned off. We gathered in a corner, trying to stay quiet, trying to make sense of the panic flooding through the hallways. The kids huddled close, eyes wide with fear and confusion. Lily, sitting nearby in her 7th grade class, was also locked down somewhere else in the building. We couldn't reach each other. I looked at Jake and tried to keep my voice calm. "We're safe here," I said. "Police are on the way." But I wasn't sure if it was true. As the minutes ticked by, I replayed the text in my mind. Why would someone claiming to be Jake's father come to the school? What do they want? I thought about the man behind bars. Dangerous, violent, unpredictable. The same man who had destroyed Maria's life. What if he was here? What if he'd come for Jake? The door rattled faintly at one point, making me jump. My heart raced. Was someone trying to get in? Or just a stray noise? Outside, the school was surrounded by wide-open fields. There were no nearby hiding places, no secret tunnels. Whoever was coming had to be seen. The police arrived quickly. Officers in dark uniforms swarmed the school grounds, shouting orders, locking down entrances, and searching every corner. After about 50 tense minutes, we were finally told the lockdown was lifted. The principal came over the intercom, voice steady but grim. A prison transport carrying several inmates crashed nearby. Some prisoners escaped, including Jake's biological father. Police are searching the area. For now, school is dismissed. I felt my knees weaken. The thought that someone so dangerous might be so close, so determined to find my son, filled me with dread. That night, as I drove home in the dark, I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching us from the shadows. I thought about how fragile safety can be, how quickly it can be shattered. At home, I locked every door and window, checked on the kids, and prayed. What was the real plan of that fugitive? Did he want to take Jake? Was this just the beginning of something worse? The police told us they'd been staking out our house, watching for any sign of him. But he never came. We never learned if he knew exactly where we lived or if this was just a dangerous coincidence. Days turned into weeks, but the fear lingered like a shadow. Jake and Lily tried to go back to normal, but sometimes, late at night, Jake would wake up screaming, nightmares chasing him. I couldn't blame him. The more I thought about it, the more questions I had. Was a lockdown really triggered by this escaped inmate? Or was there something else, something hidden behind the official story? Had he really come for Jake, or for revenge against me? The teacher who tried to protect the kids? Sometimes I wonder if the fugitive is still out there, watching, waiting for the right moment, waiting for a chance to come back. If you think this nightmare is over, think again. Danger can be closer than we realize, lurking just beyond the safety we take for granted. If you want to hear more stories like this, real, terrifying, and sometimes too close to home, subscribe and stay with me. Because some dangers never truly disappear. How would you react if, during a lockdown, a voice outside your classroom door tried to trick you into opening it? It was a normal Tuesday morning during my sophomore year at a suburban high school in Colorado. The air was cool but bright through the windows, and the halls buzzed with students moving between classes. I was in algebra class, sitting near the back, nervously tapping my pencil as I tried to finish the quiz Mr. Patel had handed out just moments before. Mr. Patel was one of those teachers who loved math, but struggled to keep a straight face when explaining it. He'd joke sometimes to lighten the mood, which helped me feel less nervous about tests. That day, I remember him smiling as he collected papers, telling some kids to double-check their answers. Then, suddenly, the overhead speakers crackled with a voice that made everyone freeze. Lockdown. Lock all doors. Turn off lights. Stay quiet. The voice was calm, but firm. It wasn't the usual cheerful announcements we were used to hearing. I glanced around the room and saw that Mr. Patel's smile had vanished. He moved quickly to lock the classroom door, switch off the lights, and instruct us to get to the corner away from windows. At first, I thought it was one of those drills. We'd had so many in the past year, practicing for fires, earthquakes, or emergencies. But then the intercom spoke again, this time with sharper urgency. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. My stomach dropped. The air in the classroom seemed heavier. Whispered questions turned into silence. Everyone's eyes were wide, and the usual sounds of shuffling papers or quiet sighs stopped completely. We huddled together in the darkest corner we could find. I tried to steady my breathing, but my heart was pounding so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. Minutes passed. The silence was broken only by the distant sounds of footsteps in the hallway. They were slow, deliberate steps, coming closer and closer toward our classroom door. Then there was a knock. Not a quick one or a random tap, but 3 slow, steady knocks. Everyone froze. The door's doorknob rattled softly, then louder. Suddenly, a woman's voice spoke through the door. "It's safe now. You can open the door." Her voice was low and steady, but there was something about it that sent chills down my spine. It wasn't kind or gentle. It felt calculated, like she was trying to convince us to lure us into danger. I looked around at my classmates. Some were biting their nails, others staring wide-eyed at the door. Mr. Patel shook his head, his finger pressed firmly against his lips, signaling us to stay quiet and not move. The knocking became louder, more insistent. The voice repeated, "Open the door. It's safe." The door rattled again, harder this time. My heart felt like it might burst down my chest. Then from somewhere down the hall, a boy shouted out, loud and clear. The knocking stopped. The footsteps faded away quickly. For a few moments, the room stayed silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. We didn't move. We stayed exactly where we were, waiting for more instructions. Finally, the police arrived. Officers burst through the hallways, flashing badges and ordering us to stay calm. Mr. Patel unlocked the door, and light flooded back into the room. We were safe. But what had just happened? The woman who tried to trick us into opening the door was caught. She was young, disheveled, carrying a bag that authorities found suspicious. No one was hurt, but the fear she brought with her stayed long after she was taken away. In the days that followed, rumors swirled through the school halls. What was in that bag? Was she planning something worse? Why did she come to our school? No one really knew. I kept thinking about those 3 knocks. Why did she try to trick us? Was she alone? Or was there someone else involved? Teachers became more alert. Security was tighter. But for many of us, the feeling of safety had been broken. At night, I found myself staring at my bedroom door, wondering if someone could be out there, waiting. What if next time we didn't hear the knock? What if next time we opened the door? The memory of that voice haunts me. The one that said, "It's safe now." Was a lie? What was really in that bag? If this story sent a shiver down your spine, don't forget to subscribe. There are more moments when danger comes in the form of a voice, a knock, or a whisper. Because sometimes the scariest threats are the ones we never see coming. Could you stay calm in a dark closet, knowing violence was unfolding just outside your school? I'm 16, a junior at Westview High, a small town school in Tennessee. It's the kind of place where most people know each other's names, where football games bring the whole town together, and where the biggest drama is usually about prom or who won the last game. But one morning, everything changed. It was early, just before first period. I arrived extra early to practice for band class. The music room was near the school's theater, tucked in a quiet hallway where the echoes of footsteps seemed softer. Mrs. Lyle, our band teacher, was already there, tuning her flute and humming softly. I was working on scales, fingers moving over my trumpet valves, when the intercom crackled. "Lockdown. Lock all doors. Turn off lights. Stay quiet." I froze. It wasn't the first lockdown, but it was the first time it felt real. Mrs. Lyle's face tightened. "Everyone, get to the storage room." Now, confused but obedient, we packed up quickly and followed her down the hall. The storage room was small, filled with old instruments and music stands. She locked the door and turned off the lights. The room went almost completely dark, with only a sliver of light from the hallway outside. The silence inside that tiny room was thick. Every breath felt loud. We could hear sirens outside. We stayed there for what felt like hours. No one spoke. The tension was unbearable. Later, Mrs. Lyle whispered that it wasn't just a fight. It was worse. When the lockdown finally ended at 9 a.m., we slowly returned to the music room. My friend Sam pulled me aside and whispered, "It happened in the courtyard, a fight, someone got stabbed." The words hit me like a punch. A student had been stabbed. A teacher was hurt trying to stop it. 2 students were rushed to the hospital. One didn't make it. The news spread quickly. Police confirmed a 17-year-old was charged with manslaughter and assault. 2 others faced lesser charges. Rumors said it was tied to local rivalries, things nobody really wanted to talk about. My mom texted me, frantic. She came to pick me up. We met at the school's track field. Neither of us said much. We just held each other. I didn't know the student who died, but the loss weighed on me. How could something so violent happen here? I keep wondering, was this a one-time tragedy, or are those rivalries going to spark more violence? Will Westview ever feel safe again? If this story touched you, if you want to understand the hidden struggles behind the headlines, subscribe. Because sometimes the darkest battles happen where you least expect them. What would you do if a grinning mascot stared at you from outside your classroom and refused to go away? It was 2017, and I was in 4th grade at a small elementary school in a quiet suburb of Maine. That year, stories about creepy mascots lurking outside schools and parks were spreading fast on the internet. Adults said it was just a prank or kids playing jokes. But for us kids, it felt real and scary. One chilly afternoon, just before the end of the school day, our class was quietly working on a math worksheet. The room was warm from the heaters, and the late winter sun filtered through the windows. Suddenly, a kid near the window gasped, "There's a bear outside." We all rushed to look, and there it was, a person in a worn-out bear costume, standing on the grassy patch right outside our classroom. The costume was ragged, the paint on the face peeling, but the smile painted on the mask was fixed and wide, like a permanent grin that didn't reach the eyes. Some kids giggled nervously. Others just froze. Our teacher, Ms. Harper, marched over and shouted through the glass. "This isn't a playground. Leave now." The figure didn't move. It just tilted its head slowly, like it was studying us, then gave a slow, deliberate wave. Ms. Harper hurried back to the classroom and called the office on the classroom phone. Moments later, she pulled the blinds shut, turning the room dark. Then the principal's voice came over the intercom, cold and serious. "Teachers, initiate lockdown procedures. Lock all doors, turn off the lights, and keep students quiet and out of sight." Our teacher locked the door and turned off the lights. We all crawled under our desks, hearts pounding. The room was silent except for the occasional whisper or stifled breath. For 20 minutes, we stayed like that, eyes glued to the door, ears listening for anything unusual. Finally, the principal announced the situation was resolved. The figure had disappeared, but the feeling in the room didn't go away. Everyone was quiet, uneasy. At dismissal, I walked home with my friend Mia. We talked quietly about what happened, still trying to make sense of it. Suddenly, from behind us, two girls screamed, "It's back! It's back!" We spun around and saw the same bear costume, half hidden among the pines near the baseball field. The figure waved again. We ran home as fast as we could. Our parents called the school, and the police searched the area, but they found nothing. No one ever figured out who was inside the costume, or what they wanted. Was the bear just a cruel prank? Or was someone stalking the school with a far more sinister plan in mind? If that gave you chills, hit subscribe, because what's coming next will stay with you even longer. What if the quietest student in school wasn't just shy, but hiding a dangerous secret that could shatter your sense of safety forever? I grew up in a small coastal town in Oregon. It was the kind of place where the streets were quiet at night, and the ocean breeze carried the scent of salt through every neighborhood. Everyone knew everyone else's name, or at least recognized their face. The high school I attended was modest, just about 150 students in the graduating class. It wasn't the kind of place you'd expect big trouble to happen. Most days felt the same. After school, some of us would skateboard along the boardwalk. Others would head down to the beach for a game of soccer. We didn't have the kind of bullying you see in movies, where kids get shoved into lockers or humiliated in front of crowds. Sure, there was teasing, nicknames, jokes that sometimes went a bit too far, but it usually blew over. But then there was Ethan. Ethan wasn't weird or scary looking. In fact, he had an ordinary face, short brown hair that always looked like it had been cut by his mom in the kitchen, and a frame so thin you'd think a strong wind might knock him over. He wasn't unfriendly, but he was quiet, so quiet that it made some people uneasy. He hardly spoke unless spoken to, and even then his answers were short, almost cautious, like he was testing every word before letting it out. I had art class with him. It was a mixed grade elective, which meant you could find freshmen and seniors in the same room. The tables were arranged in a U shape, covered in paint smudges, bits of charcoal, and the occasional doodle scratched into the wood by some bored student years before. Ethan always sat at the far end by the window, away from the chatter, his sketchbook open and a pencil moving across the page in slow, precise strokes. At first, nobody paid much attention to him, but as the weeks passed, a group of seniors began whispering about him. They said he was too quiet, that he watched people when they weren't looking. It was stupid, just kids turning their own discomfort into a joke. Still, it didn't take long before the teasing escalated. One afternoon, I saw a balled-up piece of paper hit Ethan's shoulder. He froze, glanced back over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the room without meeting anyone's gaze, then quietly went back to sketching. The art teacher, Mr. Peters, was a laid-back guy in his late 40s who wore Hawaiian shirts year-round. He was more focused on his own paintings than whatever drama played out among the students. If he noticed, he didn't say anything. I felt bad for Ethan, but I didn't step in. At that age, it was easier to stay out of trouble than to get pulled into it. One afternoon, about a month into the semester, I saw Ethan sitting on a bench near the school's parking lot lawn after the last bell had rung. He had his backpack at his feet and was staring at the ground. I just got my driver's license and spotted my car a few rows away. Something made me stop. "Need a ride?" I asked. He looked up, startled at first, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, thanks." The drive to his house took about 12 minutes. We passed the marina, where the boats bobbed gently against the docks. He lived just a few blocks from me, though I'd never noticed before. At first, the ride was silent, but then I told him not to let the seniors bother him. "They're losers," I said. "Don't waste your energy. They don't just do it in art," he said quietly. "It's all the time, in the halls, at lunch." There was something in his voice, tiredness, maybe, or the weight of holding it in for too long. I felt a pang of guilt. Maybe if I'd spoken up earlier, but I didn't say that. When we pulled up in front of his house, he gave me a small smile. "Thanks for the ride." After that, we'd nod to each other in class or in the hallway. We weren't close friends, but there was a kind of unspoken understanding. Open the window a crack. "What are you doing here?" "I messed up," he said, his voice trembling. "I did something bad at school." "Was that you?" "The lockdown." He nodded. "I brought a knife. I wasn't going to hurt anyone. I wanted to scare them, make them leave me alone." I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing. I told him he needed to turn himself in. He hesitated, his eyes searching mine for something. Maybe understanding, maybe forgiveness. When I called for my mom, he took off into the night. The police came later, but he wasn't at his house. The next day, he turned himself in. They charged him with making a threat, and he spent time in juvenile detention. I never saw him again, but sometimes I think about that one ride home and wonder if it was the only kindness he'd been shown in months. And I wonder if things could have been different if I'd done more. Did Ethan ever find redemption? Or is his moment of desperation still following him, waiting for the right time to resurface? If you believe small acts of kindness can change a life, subscribe, because the next story will prove how one small choice can mean everything.